What's happening, sports fans? Welcome back to another episode with Mom and Papa Joe's. Over the last couple of weeks, several of you have asked about my backyard trim for briskets. I've got a beautiful competition brisket trim out there, and I'm about to show you my backyard trim. Very simple. The primary function of my backyard trim is to maximize yield. So it's just a little different than my competition trim. So we're getting ready to check it out shortly. If you haven't yet subscribed to our channel, guys, what are you waiting for? I know so far you're enjoying what you've been seeing. Please help us out and subscribe. Hit that button below. Let's get going. Here's our brisket. I'm going to say some basic things, and again, I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence, but let me just point out some of the different parts of a brisket. Here we have the flat. A brisket is comprised of two pieces, two different muscles. We've got the top, which is called the flat, F-L-A-T. It is much leaner than the bottom, which is called the point. The point is very fatty. The flat tends to run in this manner, with the point underneath run in the opposite direction. So you've got two different muscles. This is what we call the heel. It is hard fat. It never renders. It is pretty much useless. First thing you want to do, of course, is to inspect your brisket. You're looking for nicks, cuts, gouges, anything that could cause a problem. This brisket doesn't look too bad. Next thing I'm going to do, before I start working on removing this silver skin and fat from the top of the flat, I'm going to try to get rid of this heel to give me more access to brisket. Remember I said in the beginning that the primary objective of my backyard trim is to maximize yield. See, very little meat and some very hard fat. This is useless. All I did was just lay my knife down even with the flat and just slice that. Guys and gals, you just want to make sure that your knife is sharp. You don't need any fancy, expensive knives. As I'm removing the silver skin, my knife is always going to be pointed upwards, my knife blade. Always upwards. I save these trimmings, not this little fat and silver skin, but I saved the majority of the trimmings. You know, I've made burgers, I've made meatloaf, Salisbury steak. I bought a grinder just for this purpose. As I get in here, areas that are a little more difficult to reach, I put my hand underneath and I push up to give me access. Most brisket's gonna have a fat vein like this one. Do not chase it very far or you're gonna create a trench. Be satisfied when you've gotten enough of it. Like that, I'm gonna leave. The majority of that is gonna render. Again, working on the silver skin, hands underneath, good sharp knife. This blade is not traditional for this purpose. This is a slicing blade, but I like the idea of using it. I've gotten comfortable with it. My hand and this knife have pretty much become one. It's a long, stiff blade. It cuts down on the number of strokes I have to, or the number of passes I have to make to knock off the silver skin very quickly. This is the thin side of your flat. Some of it is going to be trimmed off, so I'm not going to be too worried about this silver skin down here. That does not look too bad and was not too difficult. Excellent. Let's see what we got going on the back side. Again, point, flat underneath. This point meat starts on the top of the bottom and runs all the way down to about halfway, to about right here. It's some good meat. Actually, it's my favorite part of brisket. We're not going to take off too much of it. I want to leave about a 1/4 inch of fat on the flat. That 1/4 inch of fat acts as a buffer from the heat based on where your heat source is coming from. The idea about really trimming a backyard brisket well is that you are hoping to be able to eat 90+% of what you cook. So you don't want to have to do a whole lot of post-cook trimming. You work very hard to get that nice, dark, delicious, smoky bark. So you definitely don't want to have to cut it off before eating, before serving. So again, I'm going to remove some of this, expose a little bit of point, expose a little bit of this fatty meat. It really gets dark, nice smoky bark. It is my favorite part of the brisket once again. You can pretty much see where the point ends, right about here. So down here, the flat is where I definitely want to have that 1/4 inch of fat left to protect the leaner part of this brisket. I'm going to flip around, give me access to the flat. I cut towards myself a lot, so I'm wearing anti-cut gloves underneath my rubber gloves. I know you're not supposed to do that. All right, let's flip back over. Most briskets are gonna have the gray meat on the side. It's not an indication of spoilage. It's simply a little bit of burned meat from the steamed meat from the hot water wash as it's being processed. Lots of cooks will cook it. I do not. I like to get rid of it because at times it wants to get powdery and fall off. So I'm just gonna come maybe 1/8 of an inch to 1/4 of an inch inside of it and knock it off. My knife blade is always gonna be pointing towards the outside of the brisket, slanted towards the outside of the brisket as I remove. Slanting this way as I slice allows me to better round off this brisket when I'm done. And you'll see what I refer to as rounding off shortly. Knife outwards, more gray meat from the hot water wash. Come back to the opposite side. Same thing. This is a little ragged. We've got some cuts here from processing. This thin side of the flat will want to crisp up, dry as we cook. So what we're gonna do is to knock some of it off. Knife canted outwards. This meat does not go to waste. And what I've done now gives me a better idea of how much fat I've got if I need to trim more. This is so thin that I'm not going to trim any more of this fat. I'm going to leave it so that it comes across, so that it evens from side to side and aids in a more even cook. We're going to knock off a little bit from the top. Not a whole lot. Again, we're trying to maximize yield, rounding things off, simply because rounded edges will not crisp up and burn. Rounded edges create a smoother flow of smoke over this brisket. I'm gonna come back now with my kitchen shears and start rounding off, cleaning up any ragged edges that I might have. You can use your knife to do this. I just really have gotten into the habit of using my kitchen shears. Just like my competition brisket, I want to leave some point exposed from underneath the flat because it shrinks as it cooks and it lines up nicely. So I'm gonna knock off just a little more of this. Guys and gals, with this trim, as this cooks, this will shrink and line up right here so I can get some nice even slices. It's not that big a deal for backyard, but so much of my comp trim has been rolled into my backyard trim. I guess that's one of the perils of being a serious competition cook. You start wanting everything to look good, even when you're at home in the backyard. Not a problem. And now, because this gets covered up with smoke, bark, seasonings, you might not be able to find your grain as you're slicing. So now's a good opportunity, now's the time for you to mark how you would want to start your slices. And for me, I don't feel like I have to cut 100% against the grain. So my slices aren't going to start in this manner. I will come maybe 75 to 80% across the grain and knock off this thin. Some pretty nice marbling in that. And even this I will round off. As you're finishing up, you just want to poke around, and you can feel when you find that harder fat, if areas need to be tightened up, trimmed off just a little bit more. But I am fairly happy with this, and this brisket is ready to go. Rounded edges. And I would probably say you probably got 2.5, maybe 3 pounds of trimmed meat. This started out as a 15 pounder, so I'm pretty sure this is right around 12 pounds. That's it, guys and gals. So there it is, guys and gals. Tell me that wasn't simple. That was so easy. My buddy CJ Bean could do that himself. He probably couldn't. Hey, once again, I want to thank you guys for hanging out with me for a little bit. If you really like what you saw, man, please don't hesitate to give me a thumbs up. Hit me up with your comments below. And please share this channel with a friend or two. We need your assistance. Thanks again for watching. And you know what you're going to get with Mom and Papa Joe's, guys and gals. You're going to get the good shit and not the bullshit. You guys take care.